After 20 years in the technology industry, my guest, Kristina Cleary, founder of Velocity, decided to leave her C-level position within a global technology organization to pursue her passion of helping high-performing individuals and teams accelerate their impact and deliver results through one-on-one executive coaching, workshops, and consulting. Kristina is now focused on giving women in business access to the support, the guidance, and resources to empower and help drive up the numbers of women in the C-suite. Listen in as she describes how she's making that happen. You're not, what shall we say, a rookie in the marketing department, that's for sure, because you've held some pretty senior roles. In fact, your last one before you went out on your own was Chief Marketing Officer for Ceridian. So,
yeah, it was that was my latest role, probably with over, I've always been in marketing roles for the past, over 20 years now. So yeah, that was my most senior role, was to reach Chief Marketing Officer, and it was in, for a fast growth company and a company that was reaching $1 billion. So my team was quite big by the end.
Yeah. Now, you actually left pre-COVID days, if I recall. It was around 2019, right?
I did. I'm thankful that I left pre-COVID days.
Tell us about that. Yeah.
I think that navigating COVID as a marketer, particularly as somebody who's responsible in part for revenue generation, made, navigating COVID and how you were going to generate revenue, it opened up, a whole new model evolved, especially when it came to things like virtual events. At the time when I was there, we were running over 100 in-person events a year. Including our user conference, which was responsible for touching over $75 million worth of revenue. So when you look at numbers like that, and how you are no longer able to obviously run those activities, you really have to get creative, and not only get creative, but figure out how you're going to possibly manage everything when it comes to the technology, the tools, the platforms, et cetera. So I think there was just a tremendous amount of effort going on behind the scenes when it came to marketing organizations and how they're going to continue to support the revenue growth.
The big players like ServiceNow, SAP, they've done a brilliant job of taking what used to be a fantastic get together for the world, mm-hmm. and taking it digital. I've done some, I'm an advocate of both parties, and I think they've done such a really, really great job of making you feel like you were there.
Right. Yeah. It's been interesting not only to see how marketing organizations have pivoted, but how event solutions have pivoted, because obviously there were the event production companies who, typically prided themselves on running these incredible in-person events. And they either had to adapt their model to serve the virtual environment, or figure out if they were going to pivot to a whole new business model. So it's been interesting to see on that side as well, kind of what has evolved from the event production standpoint.
Well, you're no stranger yourself to being a guest speaker, a keynote mm-hmm. speaker at at events, around the world. Are you still involved? There's still some work that you're doing along that line, and how are you working things out?
Yeah, for sure. And it's all virtual now, obviously. I haven't been to an in-person meeting or event in over a year because I'm located in Canada like yourself. And it's been, the lockdowns that we've had have definitely been more restricting than what the US has experienced. So a couple of things. I'm on a board of directors for a company in the US. We've done virtual board meetings all year, but the first in-person board meeting is actually this July, which I'm the only Canadian. I probably won't be able to attend, given the fact that the borders, there's still restrictions around traveling. And we also, have been slow to roll out the second immunization shot. So with regards to keynote speaking, it's all been virtual this year, which has also been interesting from a speaker standpoint and from a delivery standpoint, right? Is getting to know all of the platforms, whether it be Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Google Meet. I find every client, every organization has a different combo of those tools, figuring out how to record them, where you're going to post the recordings. And then of course, learning to still be an engaging speaker while you're speaking to a screen with no response, where typically you would be able to engage the audience, read the audience, understand how they're reacting to your material. It is so hard when you're in a virtual environment to try and get that level of engagement. So you can, there's some tips and tools, obviously, as you're aware of, like using the chat box, using Q&A, using breakout sessions if you can. But it's difficult. It's difficult for sure from a delivery standpoint.
Well, I think it's going to be a while before we actually get back to those in-person things. So we are really definitely going to have to hone our skills and build on the experience. I hear what you're saying about, being able to read the audience. That actually is probably got to be the most difficult aspect.
Yeah, for sure. It is. And so that's why, I try and use, if there's a couple of people that I know on the line, I might call out their names to try and get a reaction or use the chat box. It's hard when you have, hundreds of people on the line. And it's hard as a speaker when they're showing a PowerPoint, your view is obviously limited as well, right? When it comes to the gallery view. So I'll try and put on gallery view and at least have, 5 or 6 heads of people that I can look at, and I encourage people to keep their video on. But that's the other thing, is people don't always want their video on, which I completely understand. But definitely encouraging people to, have their video on so you can see their faces, etc.
Yeah. So share with us a little bit your thought process when you actually made the call and said goodbye to corporate life and decided to go totally entrepreneurial again.
Yeah, so it's funny because I find that entrepreneurs who've either made the pivot from corporate typically always do it in different ways, and I'm no exception. So for me, I think I just recognized that the time had come for me to exit the business. The business was looking for a long-term commitment with regards to my role, and I had already been there for almost 10 years. I had been traveling every week, sometimes twice a week, and had young children. My family had sacrificed a lot. So I felt that it was time to make a change. And to be honest, I didn't know what that change was. So I actually committed to myself to take a sabbatical to start with. But, oftentimes when you exit corporate and people find out that you're free, I just started taking meetings, and I had probably over 40 meetings with various CEOs in tech. And the amazing thing for me, just in that first part of when I left, was starting to learn about all the incredible tech companies that are out there and amazing organizations that exist. So it was a phenomenal experience just to kind of lift your head up and spend some time learning about, what is going on in the market, meeting new people, which are typically activities you don't have a lot of time for when you're in a full-time C-level role. So that was a great experience for me. My sabbatical lasted 7 months, so not quite a year. But during that time, I decided, I had worked with executive coaches throughout my career. It was always something that interested me. And so I said, why don't I just get my certification during this time when I'm trying to figure out what I want to do? So I did get my certification with the IPEC organization and eventually with the International Coaching Federation. And while I was doing that, was approached by several companies to start doing some, consulting and coaching work. So really, it just, it naturally morphed into launching my own business. And then I decided to, pivot from not necessarily 100% marketing consulting, but to the coaching aspect. So although, my background has marketing, I also was able to build high performing teams, which is a huge part of my role, especially towards the end. And that's the part that really, fired me up, was high performing teams. And then also, a commitment to women in leadership. Those were things that I was really focusing on while I was in corporate. So it was a fairly natural progression when I went on my own to really focus on same things, like helping leaders, to increase their impact, to deliver results, helping women to really define, their vision and goals with regards to what they want to do, and providing them with the tools and strategies so that they continue to, accelerate their success. So that's what it's really morphed into now, is I'm focused a lot on one-on-one coaching, and now have expanded that into group workshops, leadership workshops, and the new program, which is a monthly subscription.
Yes, it's what attracted me to bringing you on the show, because I saw this velocity initiative, and I thought this is actually quite timely. I think
Mhm.
it always will be there. And your first post that showed this amazing research and the numbers, and how the numbers
Mhm.
are still, in a sense, running against women, right, versus
Yeah.
for them. So tell us more about the driving force behind Velocity.
Sure. So, when I've always been in tech, and in my journey, there have always been a very limited number of women at the table. And, we call it, sometimes you can call it, the bright, shiny penny syndrome, where you're the only bright, shiny penny in the room, and in this case, as a woman in a room of men. And it's not really something to be proud of. That's like the worst case scenario, is to be the only woman in the room. And when you look at the statistics, they back that. When you look at, the fact that in Canada, men hold over 90% of C-level roles, that women are falling behind early in their careers. And the fact, McKinsey had a report out that if first level managers were hired and promoted like men, there would be 1 million more women in management in the next 5 years. So the numbers really tell the story. And I find that a lot of organizations talk about the fact that they need more women in leadership. So they recognize that this is a gap. But what I find is that it's very rare for an organization to actually put a commitment to actions that are actually going to support changing that. So, it is time to drive the change. It's time to stop talking about it and to actually figure out what action steps are you going to put in place to support what you're talking about, and to try and get more women in leadership. So that was a frustration for me while I was in corporate, and I would take this on as like a side project to run, a women's networking club, to launch a women's book club. I founded the Women's Leadership Summit alongside our user conference, which grew to, 500 to 1,000 people in person. But that was because I had a personal passion for it. A lot of the times organizations don't necessarily have that person that's going to step up, or, somebody is running it off the side of their desk. And it's always the first thing to, push pause when it comes to focusing on their day job, because they're already so inundated and so busy. So that was really the driving force behind my latest program, which is called Velocity Monthly, which is a monthly subscription. And the idea behind that was to specifically provide women with the content, an opportunity for collaboration and coaching that is going to support their journey, no matter what role they're in and no matter what organization they're in.
What do you think it is that stops us from, I mean, you talked about, we're still talking about it versus doing something.
Yeah.
What is it that gets in the way?
I think a couple of things. One is, to have an initiative like this, you really do need somebody at the senior level driving this. So there's a couple of our organizations that I'm working with that have committed to providing this program, Velocity Monthly, to all of their women in the organization. And the reason why that has happened is because there's been a senior level woman at the organization who recognizes how valuable this is, and they're committed to driving the change. So there's definitely a senior level sponsor that believes in this, that pushes for the resources, whether it be people or money. But you really have to have somebody leading the cause. So I think that can be one roadblock. The other, obviously, being time, as far as, whether or not they're going to spend the time on something like this and pay for resources to support this, whether it be resources in like a program itself, or resources who can actually spend some time and not run this off the side of their desk, but make this a full-time initiative. I also think that there is a shortage of opportunities that actually like specifically address this and are designed for this reason, which is one of the reasons why I'm like, this is an opportunity. There's amazing content out there. There are amazing subject matter experts. It's a matter of somebody taking the time to coordinate it, build a program, ensure that the content is relevant, and find women in particular to deliver the content. So that's one of the things that I'm committed to, is also having women deliver the content. So this is a program that is for women by women.
That's amazing. And I was reading something that you said about being a wife and a mother and a career person. and you used the word harmony versus balance. And I love the fact that you did that. Talk to that point, will you, a little bit?
Yeah. So as you know, work-life balance is something that people always talk about. They always throw it around, and women in particular are always on this quest for like the holy grail of, work-life balance, for like the key to time management. Give me the solution. I'll spend as much money as it takes to buy the solution. And the bottom line is, like, we have so many roles as women in the society, and we have such an amazing opportunity to decide to play several roles, whereas in the past, women weren't necessarily as lucky as us to have that opportunity. So it's a matter of deciding, when it comes to work life, like what that ideal balance is for you. And it's different for every woman. So whether or not, I like calling it work-life harmony or work-life integration, there is no longer, a hard line between like, these are the work hours, especially with COVID in a virtual environment, right? You can decide when you want to work, where you want to work, when you're spending time with your family, et cetera. I think that the key is really being intentional about what that ideal day and mix looks like for you, and what are the acceptable thresholds. And so that's always been a challenge that I've had to deal with. And I find that defining the amount of time you spend in each of these categories, whether they be work and life, and, have a work-life assessment that has, 10 categories in each. It's an interesting exercise to kind of take a look at, almost, on a quarterly basis, to see how you're feeling and if anything is out of balance or out of alignment with your values. And this assessment and where you spend your time does differ based on, where you are in terms of your life as well, whether or not you have kids, if your kids are young, if your kids are teenagers, or if your kids are off to college, depending if you, on where you are in your professional life as well. So it's always an interesting exercise, and something that I find is a hot topic for all women as they struggle with what that ideal harmony looks like.
And have you rolled that into Velocity by any chance?
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely, so there's definitely topics that we find are, hot topics. With Velocity, there's actually, 3 components, I would say, of the overall program. So one is we have a Facebook community, which is free. So it's called Velocity Community. Any woman can sign up and join, and we have conversations on a weekly basis. We share, our highest posts and our highest levels of interaction are probably around like productivity tips, where there's an opportunity for people to share what works for them. And every time we have a discussion about this, there's a new tool I'm writing down, looking into, and we're actually going to host a webinar featuring women themselves, demoing how they use this tool and how it makes their life easier. So that's one of the great opportunities for this program as well, is not only like myself and subject matter experts driving the program, but women themselves sharing with each other what works. So Velocity Community. The second one is Velocity Elite, which is actually a 6-week workshop, and it's like an intensive leadership workshop. And that we run 3 times a year, and we have an entire week dedicated to productivity and time management. And that's where we walk through the assessment. And then Velocity Monthly, which is going to be, 2 sessions a month on an ongoing basis that are workshops, panel discussions, various levels of interactivity. So yes, we do address that specifically in Velocity Elite.
That's excellent. I have a friend who's in culture and change management, and she's quite outspoken about really taking time for herself. She, total a believer in self-care. And that seems to be a very prominent subject right now, because some very prominent individuals have come out publicly and said, you know what, I'm just not doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think self-care ties into every aspect of our life. And I think that it also ties into, it ties into so many things like boundary setting, when it comes to protecting your time, ensuring that you have identify what methods work for you and kind of replenish you and that are effective in replenishing you, and actually setting aside time to be intentional on a weekly basis about self-care. So figuring out what the right cadence is for you, what the right activities are for you, et cetera, because self-care can happen in so many different forms, and impact people in so many different ways. But absolutely, it's something that, again, we see being a hot topic of discussion, and it constantly, comes up in conversation with our membership base.
I'm thinking you probably made that assessment yourself, even transitioning from corporate to private, to your private company.
Absolutely. I was
Yeah.
laughing about that the other day with the coach that I actually work with, because I have a business coach as well. And, I left corporate and I had the ideal day, the ideal week, like Fridays were going to be pretty light. I wanted to end work by Fridays at noon. I wanted to end every day at 4. And as my business has continued to grow, I've seen myself just push those boundaries. And, I'm back to working 10-hour days, which there's only one person that has control over your time, and that is you. So you either choose to like put the pedal down or, take the pedal off. Or for me, I'm at an inflection point where, I'm starting to grow my team. And so as an entrepreneur, it's always hard to decide, what to do yourself and when it's time to kind of expand and delegate some of those responsibilities to additional resources. But it's the same in corporate, is deciding when is the right time for you to do things yourself or delegate to somebody on your team or hire an additional resource onto your team, et cetera. So these are all overlapping topics. Oh,
Absolutely.
Here comes my, this is my COVID.
That's beautiful.
She sits at my desk. It's always entertaining for people when she walks into the picture.
That's a beautiful thing. I can't believe that just happened, but you know what? You should actually expect that today, right?
It's like working from home. You got to expect kids, you got to expect dogs, you got to expect internet outages. It's all something that I've found that we've adapted to now, right?
And you can't, I find you shouldn't be tough on yourself, when these things happen, because we've literally been thrown into it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Who could have ever expected these circumstances? And, a lot of, I actually talk about this a lot, especially with some of my one-on-one clients. And yesterday I had a discussion with a client who was just, really in a slump, and just not feeling herself and struggling with her emotions during meetings, et cetera. And it's like, we need to give ourselves a break. Like, we just went through this 1.5 years of trying to figure out how to deal with COVID. Now things are opening up and we're coming out of COVID. It's yet another change that we're going to. And now we're trying to figure out how to run a business in this new hybrid state, and a new world. So the next 6 months are going to be just as stressful as the first 6 months when COVID actually hit us.
I'm finding as a coach myself, because even though I'm a social media strategist, I still put on that coaching hat because we're talking about something that's new to them, a new way of taking their message to market. And yesterday in a catch-up meeting with one of my clients, we didn't talk about business. We talked about what was troubling her. It's funny that you just mentioned that. And that became, we spent the hour. Actually, I spent the hour listening. She spent the hour talking to me about what was bringing her down this week.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, that's a method of self-care unto itself, is just being able to talk to somebody, express your emotions, express how you're feeling, can also be very healing. So a lot of those conversations are happening and have been happening for over 1 year, and are continuing to happen for sure.
Yeah. I was really happy to see this spin up, this velocity spin up. And then I realized it was a monthly thing. So are you, what kind of balance or harmony, should I say, are you developing between Cleary leadership and velocity? I mean, will there come a time, do you think, where you have to choose one or the other, or
it's a good question, Peter. And I was actually, it's something I'm actually going to be spending some time on over the next couple of months as I think about what the future looks like with regards to my business. But I think that it will continue to be a hybrid no matter what, in terms of that private coaching and the group workshops, and then this monthly subscription. So I think it will end up being a hybrid, especially for the next year. It may eventually morph into being a focus more on, I would say, velocity, because that really is so rewarding from a transformation standpoint to be able, it really is what energizes me right now for the most part, is like seeing a group of 20 women come together, and transform, whether it be in the 6-week program or in the monthly program, and the impact that it has on them has really been incredible. And one-on-one coaching, you see similar transformations for sure. I don't want to, degrade one-on-one coaching or say it's not a focus, but with Velocity Monthly, it's just in that, that niche of mine when it comes to sharing my experience for women in leadership. And I think the power of it is in the networking and the group interaction, and providing an opportunity for women to know that they're not alone, to work with like-minded women who are striving for the same things, who are struggling with the same things. We really find that that's when they become more transparent and open up, because they're not alone at the end of the day. So it is a huge passion project for me, and I think there is such a need for it right now. I do have clients who participate in all 3 programs. They participate in one-on-one coaching, they participate in Velocity Elite, the 6-week program, and they participate in Velocity Monthly. So I have, so I've had clients who have participated in all of those, and it's a great combination. So that's why I do think like the hybrid model will probably be here for a while.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think the dynamics of the group is that they actually end up learning from each other versus the adjudicator of the session, right?
Absolutely. We definitely play like that, that coaching moderator role, but every session that we do does have a breakout session where, there's multiple breakout rooms. They have an opportunity to talk amongst themselves, share amongst themselves, build relationships. And even myself, one of the reasons why we really believe in the breakout session model is this past year, I have formed incredible relationships with people, and many of them have come from a breakout session, whether it be as part of a learning and development session or a networking group. But even if people can walk away with one new relationship, whether it be in a Velocity Monthly session or during the Velocity Elite program, that to me is a successful outcome.
Yeah, no, I liken the whole process even to the way that you actually market, because you market to a group, but there's going to be one individual in that group that just goes, oh yeah, you just hit my switch, right? And now I've got to make something, and it's up to them to come forward and let you know that, I want more of this, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, very, very excited about, about the future, about the possibilities, and, the mixture and what that will look like. Well, I'm sure it will evolve, but right now, I'm very excited about all the programs that I'm working on.
Awesome. Now, when you get a woman the first time that that you're in front of, like I'm thinking that their mindset might be such that I've had the lid on me for so long, I don't quite know how to take it off. Like, what kind of process do you actually go through in order to help remove that barrier?
So there's a couple of things. Obviously, like, I think that the content from a learning and development standpoint tends to trigger some thoughts that weren't necessarily there. When we're working and we're heads down on things, we might not even know what it is that's blocking us. And when we start to talk about like what a block or a barrier is, and what do you want, and why are you not achieving it, right? So what is something that you've wanted for the past year or past couple of years that you have not yet achieved? And when you actually like write that down and think about it, it's like, okay, now why haven't you achieved it? And when you actually start that thought process, it's amazing what people come up with. And this was an exercise that I did myself a couple of years ago. There was, I've had so many things that you've always had like in the kind of weighing on you in the back of your mind, things that you've wanted to do, whether it be personal or professional. And when you start thinking about that and like why you haven't moved forward, you can actually like get quite creative in thinking about how you can start to move that forward, right? Whether it be, there's so many different tools that you can use, whether it be, goal setting, planning, visioning, etc., and working through, some of those mental blocks as well, if that's a component of it. So these are discussions that we find naturally, I guess, happen based on the content that we're providing.
Well, that's fantastic. You're doing a great job, by the way. I think you come off as a coach's coach. That's the kind of feeling that you give me, right?
Oh,
and
thanks.
because I think we all know that we do better if we just take a little guidance or a little input from somebody else. But there's many of us that we're resistant. It's almost like change, right? Like we're resistant because of, you know, just something homeopathic about us that's taking us back to, you know, our comfort zone, right?
Right. Yeah, oftentimes, you know, people don't even necessarily know that a coach is the solution for them, or that a program like this is the solution to them. So I have a couple of corporate organizations who always send, you know, 6 to 7 people through our elite program. And sometimes these women are nominated and they don't even know what the program is. So we ask them, you know, what is your goal to be in the program? They're like, well, I didn't even know what the program was, but what I walked away with is this, and this, and this. You know, so sometimes women don't even know that, you know, there is a solution for them. Sometimes I work with one-on-one clients that come to me, they're like, I'm blocked. I just know that I'm blocked. I don't know why, and I don't know how to get out of it. And then, you know, through our one-on-one sessions, we kind of are able to quickly identify, you know, what the real challenge is and where they actually want to go. And sometimes it's really helpful to talk to a third party about, you know, what you're actually wanting to accomplish, because you just don't spend time focusing on long term when you're kind of heads down in your job every day being so busy. You know, you don't take time out of your day to focus on, where do I want to be in a year? Where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? When's the last time you sat down and thought about where you want to be in 10 years? For most of my clients, it's something they've never done.
It's amazing. We'll spend hours and hours on the internet researching a holiday for ourselves, and then won't even spend 5 minutes on our lives, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great analogy.
I've always said that, you know, if you want, you know, I'm amazed at people. I still am, you know, they, we're going to Cancun and we're going to be doing this and we're going to be and they put out the plan and it's brilliant, right? And it's really well organized. And I'm thinking like, and then you start talking about their life and where they are. And it's like, well, I'm getting nowhere. I'm doing nothing. You know,
Right.
I'm feeling Debbie Downer today, you know, and I'm thinking, if you just applied, you know, what the process that you did to get to Cancun with your life, you'd be so much better off.
Yeah. But it's just sometimes people don't even know that that is a possibility or, you know, a way they should be spending their time. Or have the tools to kind of, you know, be able to even start, you know, they don't know where to start. So
where do you see Velocity in the future? I know it's early days, but you must have some kind of vision for yourself.
You know, the vision that I have in general is that we just have a world with women in senior leadership positions, a world full of women in senior leadership positions. That's like the very aspirational view. So anything that I can do, whether it be through our Velocity programs, through one-on-one coaching, to help change the statistics that we know are out there with regards to the gap, is where I'm going to be spending a lot of my time. So I think with regards to the future of Velocity, there's so much potential. If you want me to get specific, one of the things that we're definitely interested in doing in 2022 would be an in-person summit. I think providing that, you know, an amazing experience that is highly intensive over a couple of days will be very effective for people. And it's something that our clients have expressed that they want as well. So I would say that's probably going to be like the next step with regards to our programs. So that's one that we're working on in the background right now.
Yes, Kristina is truly motivated and clearly passionate about helping raise the bar and the numbers of women in the C-suite. And if her drive and energy is anything to go by, I would say that Kristina is well on her way. Thanks for listening.